We all love a good adventure story, but what about an adventure story that's actually real? It's true. It pulls you in so you feel as if you're actually walking inside some of history's most impactful moments. Well, author Doyle Glass says that actually there is nothing more exciting to him. And today we're actually getting a chance to talk with him one-on-one. Doyle, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Christine. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
My name is Christine Dobbin. I am an Emmy Award-winning journalist, and we're going to actually walk alongside Doyle as he takes us through his journey from sculptor to historian to author, and very recently, a viral sensation. That's what I want to talk to you first about. You actually have a post that you put on your Facebook page this week and also Instagram about Louis Lucky Cloud. He's one of 25,000 Native Americans who fought in World War II. It's gotten 127,000 likes, 6,400 comments, 37,000 shares. I want to ask you, first of all, how did you come across his amazing story?
Well, Christine, I came across his amazing story, ironically, on Facebook from another post. I'm a member of a number of World War II group, folks that are interested in the world wars, the Vietnam War, and his post came up, and seeing his name, I then researched him, and I found this photograph on I think it was the Yakima Daily Herald. The Yakima tribe, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a Native American tribe in Washington State. And this photograph of Louis Cloud was taken, I believe, in 2004. He was 84 at the time, I believe, and he passed away at age 87. And just reading his story, I was then able to do a little more research by Google just to find out a little bit more about him and his life story. So it was actually very simple and a very amazing, untold story of heroism.
And that picture is posted on both your Facebook page and Instagram. Just a very compelling picture. And I think for me, when I look at that picture and just his face, I see courage, but I also see a man who probably has a million stories inside of him.
Exactly. And to your point that you indicated earlier, I personally have always been fascinated by the untold heroic story. Those heroes from all walks of life, every race, sex, orientation, time frame, that fall under the term hero, but are untold. And his story, as you pointed out, how many untold stories did he have in his life? That's just amazing to me. Truth is always, to me, more fascinating than fiction, and his story shows that.
This was a man he was a paratrooper, a Bronze Star, Purple Heart recipient. Do you believe now more than ever that we need to hear these stories of past heroes and how they shape the world that we live in today?
Absolutely. And, I think in all of our countries, in the United States in particular, the comments on this post, the reason I think it went viral is that people were not aware of the Native Americans who fought in the many wars of this country and the heroism that they showed. And people were simply surprised. The main comment was, I never knew that. I never heard that. And to your point, again, I think people are starving for these stories of real heroes, all walks of life, different cultures that have helped shape our country. Now, our country is not perfect. We know that. It's like a test tube that continues to evolve and hopefully get better. But people over the life of our country and all countries have contributed to make it better many times with their lives. And, of course, Louis Lucky Cloud was one of those many people who put his life on the line for America and for freedom.
I know in talking with you earlier this week, you made some kind of comment about, I think it was leading towards why you're not a fiction author. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you found with the real life stories that you dive into?
That's a great question because I've always read nonfiction. My first two books were nonfiction based on accounts from the Vietnam War, from the Marines that were there. The new work that I'm working on is actually a narrative nonfiction work, to where an author combines fiction with true historic fact, which to me is perfect. I mean, that as a writer, the kind of writer I am, that is amazing, to be able to put yourself into the shoes, if you can, of one of these individuals with their story, and live that, and hopefully tell that story to a reader as a living person or living thing, if that makes sense.
You've described yourself as a historian, storyteller of history, but writing wasn't really your first historical outlet, was it?
It wasn't. I've always been fascinated by these stories, but my first outlet with this was 20 years ago. I live in Dallas now, but I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and I became fascinated by the story of a young Medal of Honor recipient from Louisville by the name of John Squires, who earned the Medal of Honor when he was just 18 and then was killed in action at Anzio. At the time, I was into art. I'm a creative person. I wanted to create monumental sculptures. So with the people of Louisville, we were able to create the Kentucky Medal of Honor Memorial, which is now in downtown Louisville. And that is a statue of John Squires on the night that he earned the Medal of Honor. And it honors all Medal of Honor recipients from Kentucky. Since then, I sculpted one for the state of Texas from another Medal of Honor recipient, this one from Texas, named George O'Brien, from my hometown of Midland. And that was an amazing thing. I loved it, but I learned that there's so many stories. You can't create a monument to everyone, but you can create a monument when you write about them. And so I said, okay, what's really driving me here are these stories, these people. So now I'm with the two nonfiction books that I wrote, I'm now writing about these folks. But yes, it all started probably about 20 years ago.
That's incredible. A lot of the work you've done related to World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, outside of the motivations of why each war happened, what are some of the similarities that you found with the individual heroes as you tell their stories from these different wars?
The similarities are great, from all the different conflicts. A self-sacrifice, a desire to do what's right. And once again, not going into any of the political reasons for the various conflicts. But these individuals that want to put themselves on the line for the betterment of their country and their people and to save lives. And that's what I've seen, courage, bravery, determination. And I think what you also see in all these conflicts is these individuals fought for their comrades. If you have a Marine company, band of brothers, they fought for the guy next to them. But that applies also to what I'm writing about now, secret agents in occupied France during World War II. You're the courier next to you, the people you're with. Many times these people fought for their friends, for their loved ones, for their families. And I think that is very compelling when it comes down to true bravery. Why did these people do what they did? Many times it's to save the person next to them. And that's been very compelling.
It seems like courage almost has a timelessness to it.
Absolutely. And it's the unsung heroes that have the real courage. It's the ones that don't brag about it, don't talk about it. They just do it. And those are the folks that won't have their story told because they're not after fame or to do that. They're out, they did what they did because they felt that's what they had to do. So I feel like, my mission is, all right, well, I think people need to learn your story. Just like Louis Lucky Cloud, he wasn't somebody who bragged about himself or told his story, but somebody else should do that. And I was really happy and proud to be able to expose his story to all the folks on Facebook and Instagram.
I think we all grew up reading different history books, in school. But when we read it through the eyes of an individual or maybe a smaller group of individuals, which is what a lot of your work focuses on, how does that make a difference to the reader in really understanding these historical events?
Well, I feel like I've been very lucky. In the two books that I wrote earlier, I interviewed countless Vietnam veterans. So I got an idea of what the war, what they went through their eyes. So now with Benoit's War, that's the book I'm working on now, narrative nonfiction. I feel like I was able to learn from the real life heroes and apply some of that to the real facts of his life, so the reader can, as close as I can estimate it in my own imperfect way, feel, see, hear, smell, have the fears, have the courage, the risk taking to live in the shoes of that person. And that's, to me, is monumentally exciting. I can't think of a greater adventure, and I can only try to do the best I can to make it seem that way. Does that answer your question? That's a great question.
Yes. And let's talk a little bit more about, you've given a couple of hints about your current project. You've poured through recently declassified documents from British archives. I'm sure this has taken a lot of time. Talk about your process and what you're working on.
Well, I am lucky in that I enjoy going through research. I enjoy reading historical documents. I was able to locate some great folks in Great Britain and in France. Robert Benoit is the subject of the book. He was a Grand Prix and Le Mans champion before the war, and then became an agent for the British Special Operation Executive, which was an organization created by Winston Churchill, basically to undermine the Nazis through sabotage, spying, reconnaissance. It's really almost a gamble to try to win the war. Those documents that you mentioned have recently been declassified after all this time and are been made available at KEW in Great Britain. And my researcher there was able to photograph and send me all of these amazing documents. Locating sources in France has also been a lot of fun, trying to learn as much as I can about these people and fill in the holes that I don't know about. So it's been a great pleasure. Like I indicated, reading a statement given by a witness after being in Gestapo custody about what happened. It's really spine tingling. I really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. And in this project, which you've done a lot of research, any sneak peeks that fans can maybe get a little taste of until the book comes out?
Absolutely. On my website, doyleglass.com, folks get on that and get on to the mailing list. One of the things that we're offering is part of that research that we found and photographed. Not only photographs of Benoit when he was with the SOE, and those are amazing, but an industrial sabotage report from Colonel George Ream, who was a colonel with the SOE back in 1941, 1944. Basically, how do we go about spying? How do we go about sabotage, espionage? It's a crucible of kind of where it all started, of where the Cold War after World War II up to today. So that is available on the website. Folks can go and get on the mailing list, and that, among a number of other things, short stories about other heroes, folks can actually look at those original British archives.
And we do want to mention, if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask of Doyle about his upcoming project, they can put them in the Facebook chat. I know you've worked on some other war stories as well. And as fans are waiting for this next book to come out, how can they read some of your past work and particularly on topics like the Vietnam War?
Great question. Both of my prior books are available on Amazon. Lions of Medina came out in 2007, published by Kalichi Press and then by Penguin Trade Paperback. And that is the story of one company of Marines, Charlie Company 1-1, who fought on Operation Medina they call it the Hai Lang National Forest of South Vietnam near the DMZ. It's basically a story of Marines that get surrounded and almost get wiped out, but they don't. And on the cusp of, I won't give away the drama of the story, but on the cusp of being wiped out, overcome by, I think, 3 or 4 companies of NVA, North Vietnamese Army troops, the Marines counterattack and fight back and survive. There are great stories of heroism in that book. One of them, a combat photographer by the name of William Perkins, who earned the Medal of Honor in that operation. He jumped on a hand grenade to save his comrades. And to me, it still amazes me to think about what went through that young man's mind. And it simply was, I'm going to save my buddies. And once again, I'm getting chills right now, even thinking about it. I wrote the book 13 years ago. The other book is called Swift Sword, and it is about a similar concept. It's a company of Marines in the Quai Son Valley in 1967 who fought another harrowing operation against overwhelming North Vietnamese Army troops. A Navy chaplain, Father Vincent Capodanno, also earned the Medal of Honor to administer last rites and to protect Marines that were being wounded in attack. And he himself also lost his life. So those 2 stories are available on Amazon in paperback, also on Kindle. And, folks can go check them out. Once again, Lions of Medina. The other one is Swift Sword. And read, once again, unsung heroes, people that we just don't know about that'll, once again, I can read those books, just pick them up right now and read them. So that's where folks can find those.
What's maybe one of the biggest challenges in your work in writing about these individuals?
With Lions of Medina, one of the big challenges from the very beginning was, how do I honor all of these young men, but then tell the story? And a lot of folks will say about that book, there's so many characters. There's a list in the back of who they were. And I realized that at the beginning, it can be a little like who's on first. And I did that specifically knowing that it could be a little bit of a challenge because I wanted to honor those guys. I wanted them to have their name in a book and their story, either however brief, told. So that was kind of an initial challenge in writing that, is how to tell everybody a little bit about this person's life. With the new book, Benoit's War, the obvious challenge is, how do I channel this man, who lived nearly 70 years ago, who was French, who was a Grand Prix race car driver. I'm none of those things. So channeling what went through his mind can be an obvious challenge, but based on the research and the sources and common sense, I think it's going to come out well.
And as you're working on your next piece of work that's going to be, coming out, when you have gotten access to some of these, documents, I'm sure that these are documents, no one in the world not many people in the whole world have seen as they're being released, right?
Exactly. People have read them, people go through them, but nobody knows they're there. Once again, Robert Benoit, he was a celebrity in his day. But outside of racing circles, people that are interested in Formula One history, nobody's going to know who he was. In France, yes, they will know. So if you don't know who this person was, then how do you know to go research him or her in the British archives? One of his colleagues was named Denise Bloch, Bloch. She was Jewish, also French, and she became one of his colleagues in his sabotage network against the occupying Nazis. Few people know who she was, but she was a heroine. So just finding the name and then putting two and two together, then going to the archives, it's like mining for gold. Another individual who I recently sought some research on, you actually had to gain special permission to look at some of his personal letters that are still there. And nobody's looked at them in 50 plus years. Nobody knows what they are. So it's a lot of like archaeology in one sense. It's very exciting.
And what made you want to focus on Benoit?
I was looking for a great story. I was looking for something that was different. I had already written stories about combat troops. So I wanted to write about a civilian who was basically put up against it. He was a veteran of World War I, but I wanted to find just a great story. And his story is fascinating. He was older, nearly 50. So he wasn't, a young gun. He could have, back in that day, sat in his house. He was a celebrity. He had money. He could have waited it out. He could, he had options. He could have, said, well, whatever. He didn't. He fought to get into the war constantly at every angle. So I think about what motivates this kind of guy. This guy's 50. He's already done a whole bunch. Why does he want to jump into this war? Well, obviously, his country's been occupied. France. He's a Frenchman. His country's been occupied. He wants them out. He's a patriot. So it's just a great adventure story, as we began our discussion, and it's just intriguing. So that's when I read it, I'm going, wow, this is it. There was nothing else written about him. And I thought, what would his war look like from his eyes? The title, Benoit's War, and it just clicked. Sometimes for me, these things just click, and that's what happened.
How many times have you thought to yourself, if I could interview him? Have you thought about that?
That would be amazing. Well, he probably said, well, you didn't get that exactly right. You didn't, no, I wasn't going to do it that way. And you're wrong about that. But on the other hand, I think he might look at me and say, well, yeah, that's what happened. So that's kind of one of my dreams, to be able to interview, folks that are gone, and like, what was it really like? What we've heard the story, we've heard the history, but what was it really like? Tell me what it was really like. So yeah, that would be amazing. When I've read some of his letters and some of his statements, didn't write a whole lot. He was a race car driver. So that's been pretty fascinating to do that.
Well, it's been great talking with you, learning about your past, how you got to where you are now, your work coming up, and just the stories you continue to unveil that people are learning about on Facebook and in your social media platforms. If anyone does want more information, you can go to doyleglass.com. And I do want to ask you, any final thoughts as we go into the weekend? It's Father's Day weekend. Any final thoughts just about your work and what's coming down the pipeline for you?
Sure, absolutely. First off, I want to thank you, Christine, and I want to thank everyone that liked this post about Louis Lucky Cloud. That's been amazing. And I want to thank everyone that has chimed in and commented and shared. That's these folks, these are just great stories. So I want to thank you. Final thoughts, Father's Day. I always think of, we're so, in this country, all of us in the world, despite the good and the bad, we're very lucky. And we should be, I would say, let's just be grateful for those who have fought and died and sacrificed so that we can have the life that we have. That's one of been my main motivations is, all right, I'm going to tell your story to thank you that I'm able to live, that I'm able to tell these stories in peace. So final thought would be just to grateful to all those that have gone before, the fathers, the mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, that and have given us what we have today.
Well, thank you so much. And we hope everyone will have a good weekend. And we hope that we can have Doyle join us again for a chat in the future.
Great. Thanks very much, Christine. Bye-bye.
Bye.